Okay, welcome to the first installment of Eclipse by Example with the Huntsville Eclipse Framework Developers Group, and also my first ever screencast, so I hope this works well. This is a recap of what we did at our last get-together, because our screencast software wasn't working then. So I'm just going to go through my notes, basically run through the same type of thing we did at the meeting, and that'll be it. First off, we had some new folks last time, so I'll go ahead and cover a couple of ground rules. This is an Eclipse group. Typically, all of our presentations that we make are also made available under the Eclipse public license, which you can find a copy of that at eclipse.org. We try to keep the meeting moving as much as we can. You know, we'll stop and ask and talk about things some. We try to keep questions to maybe 3-minute maximum time frame. If it's going to take longer than that, usually we'll take notes, put it in a parking lot, and come back to it if we have time at the end of the meeting. What we're showing right now is the Huntsville Eclipse website. You get a lot more information about who we are, when we meet, things like that. You can see all of our previous meetings on the Meetings tab, except for this one that isn't posted yet. Presenters right now, it's just been me, I'm Jay Langley, and Kyle. Sponsors, right now we've got Cohesion Force, but we are currently looking for additional sponsors in the Huntsville area, mostly to help us provide a room for 20 to 40 people, with some AV equipment so we can do this type of thing. Of course, you see what you get, plus, don't forget about the shameless plug and who to contact. So we'll just get right into it. So this is the first time we're actually putting stuff out there for the group itself to make contributions and pull down and see what's going on. So to get there, we have all of our stuff posted on GitHub with the Huntsville Eclipse Framework Developers Group organization. So where your head is Eclipse by Example is where the repository we're going to be using. So what we're doing is an application to do manage photos. It could be print photos. It could be stuff that you've taken, with a cell phone camera, that type of thing. Also with managing like portfolios and some things like prices or orders, that type of thing. We tried to find an example application that we could use as kind of a baseline to start working with as many different Eclipse technologies as we can. In our last meeting, we went through and created this roadmap, mostly a mind map, but talking about all of the different things that we wanted to learn and investigate that Eclipse provides. So today we're going to talk about the EMF data model and code gen. I believe next week Kyle is going to be talking about rich client platform, maybe a little bit window builder, and then we'll move on from there. So you can see the immense amount of technology that Eclipse brings to the table. Some of the decisions we make on how to use some of these may not be in the best interest of a product itself, but will give us the best case we can find for real world use. So that being said, we'll move on to cloning from an Eclipse, a GitHub piece. So you would go through, click on Eclipse by Example, and then down here in the bottom right, you'll see the clone URL. There's a couple of different versions of this. I'm showing the HTTPS, which you can get without having to have a GitHub account. If you do have a GitHub account, which you will need one if it comes time where you want to actually participate and possibly make code contributions to this project, you'll have to get a GitHub account, and then you can use this SSH URL to clone. So first I'm going to grab this guy, copy it to the clipboard. Then I'm going to flip over to, if this works, well, that didn't work. Let me go see if I can find it this way. There we go. So next we're going to show how to clone a Git repo. So first you would run Eclipse. This is the EMF or modeling SDK that I grabbed off of Eclipse downloads. This is, I believe I'm currently running Luna. You would go to the Git perspective, which if Git perspective doesn't show up here, you can click this icon and it'll bring up all the different perspectives that you have loaded. So you would select Git and then hit OK, and the Git perspective would appear. And I already have this loaded once, so I will go ahead and show you how to, I'll name it something else. So we're going to clone a Git repository and add it. So whatever it was that I had copied to my clipboard automatically appears here. You'll see that it's HTTPS, the host is github.com, and then this is the path to the actual repository. And I actually don't even need to authenticate or anything. So we'll hit next. Right now we only have a master branch, so that's the one you would pick, and then next again. And of course this directory is taken, so I'm going to call this delete me and say finish. So then it will go out and it'll grab the Eclipse by example stuff that we've done so far, which is really nothing, and show you the working directory, which right now just has this readme, which is what you see on the front page of the Huntsville Eclipse, or on the Eclipse by example repo. On branches, you will see local, which is your master branch. Remote tracking, you will see the origin/master branch, and then under remotes you would see origin, which we'll get a little bit into Git as we get going. Yeah, that was great, wasn't it? So we'll just cross things as we get to them as far as learning Git. If you are really adventurous and want to be the head of the class, there is a Git book that I'd recommend. It's called Pro Git. It's available at git.scm.com/book. It's an awesome book. It goes through basically everything you would want to know. You probably won't know how to run Git on the server. Distributed Git is interesting because you can actually pass repositories around and share with one another. So it's a pretty interesting thing. So we've cloned the Git repo. Next we did a recap of the roadmap. So I guess now it's time to actually get started in this thing. What we need is some type of a project using EMF to do modeling. There's another Eclipse tool called Papyrus that I use a good bit to do just typical UML type design. So this is what I had. It's pretty easy, not that complicated, and I'm sure we'll expand on this a lot as we get going. But the basic concept is a photo that's got a name, a string for some tags, a URI because it could be online somewhere, it could be on your computer, and then just some generic ID. We'll probably wind up using some type of a UUID. If you've ever taken photos with your camera or anything else, you'll know that there's a lot of tagged information. Where we're going to look at using the EXIF tags because there's a lot of stuff there. And we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. Also, we've got this concept of a gallery, which might be an online collection. It may be an actual physical gallery where some photos may live. To manage. At some point, we would like to include connections to online type services, either Google Plus or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, that type of thing, and learn how to do web services as well. On this side, you've got a print, which is a print of a photo. This is where we're looking at managing things like cost, price, inventory type concepts. We may be able to pull in some rule engines or something like that to help do some things. Some of these will also help when we get into kind of the reporting kind of frameworks like BERT and things of that nature to actually have some data that we can report on. So anyway, this is the type of data model that we want to do in EMF, and I just want to show how to create a data model and how to generate code from it, and then the basic sample piece that Eclipse gives you out of the box. So the first thing we're going to do is over here on the Package Explorer, we're going to do a new, I'm going to go ahead and go to Other, and then Eclipse Modeling Framework. The one I want is an empty EMF project. So I'm going to go ahead and create that. I'm going to name it org HSV Eclipse. I'm going to call this Photo Toolkit. And these are just things I made up. The typical package naming or project names is a reverse URL. So actually, I guess I need to go with com, don't I? Let me go double check that. It's bad that I can't remember off the top of my head. But yes, HuntsvilleEclipse.com. So that's what we're going to go with, is com, Huntsville Eclipse Photo Toolkit. And I'm going to go ahead and finish that out. And here for the model, I'm going to right click and do New, Other. I'm going to create a new eCore model, and I'm going to call it Photo Toolkit. And then next, and that's fine, and finish. And this will bring up a generic modeling kind of a view. So the main things I use here are the model editor here, and then the properties view. So if you don't have the properties view open, under quick access up here, you can actually just start typing in stuff, and properties will show up, and you can click it and it'll show you the properties view. I guess it'll show me the one I already have. So let's see. So here, the first thing I'm going to do is create a new package, which is already created for me. It just doesn't have a name. So I'm going to call this Photo Toolkit. Namespace prefix, I'm going to use the same thing. And then the namespace URI is, this gets important later, especially as you start to have multiple packages and possibly different versions of packages. So I'm going to call this http com hsv eclipse dot photo toolkit 1.0 is what I'm going to call it. I'm sure we'll change some of this stuff later. So I'm going to save that. So then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat and go back over here and look at what I need. So I need a photo with tags, URI, and ID. So then over here I'm going to create a new child for eClass. I'm going to name it photo. It has no super types of anything like that. So the next thing is a new child. I'm going to create a new attribute. We'll call that ID. Type is going to be, let's see, string. And we'll just continue doing that type of thing. So next is a name. For some reason it doesn't want to autocomplete if I just type straight into the field. But let's see, new child attribute. So this one's going to be tags. Go check and see if that was that was a string, and it was 0 to many. So this is e string. Come on, e string. So while we're at it, I will get into some of the lower bound and upper bound type of thing. Lower bound is exactly what you would think it would be. It's a lower bound on some collection. Upper bound right now is set to 1. If you want it to be 1 to any number, then you make that a -1, and it'll show up as 0 to star. If you want to make that, maybe you only wanted to cap it at 10 strings, you could do that. But what's the fun of that? So we're going 1 to many on that. And then also we want a new child for an attribute. We're going to call this the URI. At some point we may flip this to use an actual URI type, but I don't know what type of URI we want yet, so we're going to, of course, use a string. Alright, so now we've got our photo with 4 attributes. So the next thing we need is going to be a gallery. So we got a name, a description, and a URL for the gallery. So I'm going to create that real quick. So a new child, eClass, and gallery. So then it's going to have an E attribute of a name. That's a string. It's going to have a URL, which is also a string. And well, let me check. I believe we wanted a description. Yep, a description that's 0 to 1. I'm not really going to get into the forcing a name or a URL at this point. So the description, if I can type it correctly. And then the E type is a string. Okay, so the next thing we want in a gallery is a collection of photos. So I'm going to right click, and for new child, you see you've got 4 items in here. We've been using just the E attribute. E attributes, think of those as your primitive types, either enumerations or integers or strings. You can actually create your own data types if you want with by a new data type class. You'll see the E operation, which generally we don't use E operation that much at all because we like to keep data separate from the operations on the data. Occasionally you wind up with things that either maybe it's a quick thing that only uses the data that's in the class. You know, maybe you need to calculate a price based on a quantity, you know, a total cost based on a quantity plus a price or something like that. That's a pretty easy thing. There's also some OCL type things, that's object constraint language, that you can do to force the model to be valid at all times. E-annotation is something that I'm sure we'll get into at some point. We've used E-annotations a lot. I actually presented something at EclipseCon last year about how to use E-annotations to drive an indexing model using Apache, I think it was Apache Lucene. Search engine. So the next thing we want is an E-reference, because that's how you reference another class. So we're going to hit that. I'm going to set the type of it to photo, so we have that available. We're going to name it photos. And we're going to make the upper bound 1 to many. There's another thing that we talked about a good bit at the meeting that we'll talk about here. There's this piece called containment. Containment means that this item, when it is serialized, or actually when it's created, it is owned or managed, I'm not sure the right way to say that, by the gallery. So there's some interesting things that go along with that. The first thing I'd go with is I think we captured some gotchas as we started walking through during the meeting. So containment is one of those. So let's say I have a gallery that contains photos. If this containment was set to true, which we're not going to do that right now, but assume that you had a gallery where you had photos and containment was true. And so you were running the application and you had 2 galleries and you added a photo to the first gallery. So a photo is now contained in that gallery. If you take that same photo and you add it to the second gallery, since an item can only be contained in one place, there's EMF code that would actually remove it from the first gallery. And as long as you know that that is going to happen, great. If you don't know that that is going to happen, it takes a good bit of time to figure out what went on and what went wrong. One of the other things that we talked about was a resource. Typically, these EMF type objects are serialized to resources. That's the code that gets generated for you, manages or gives you the capability to do that. A resource, basically think of that as some type of a file somewhere. It may be online, it may be in a database somewhere, but it's some type of a serialized file. Let's see, so that's that. So we got photos in a gallery. I don't think I'm going to do the pricing model yet, or the print model yet. One thing I did want to show was a way to do some other things. Let's say I've got this EXIF class that I want to do. I know that EXIF has a lot of tags in it, and I actually went out online and I found an XML schema that contains all of the EXIF tags and everything. It's somewhere in an Oracle website, so that was very helpful. So the interesting thing is I have this schema. Currently have it in here. We'll load it up and take a look at it real quick. Let's see if we can get to it. Any type, sequence, no, types. There we go. So you can see it's got quite a bit of stuff in it. And I really don't want to go type in all of this stuff. Because I mean, you got like white balance type that's got several things, and you've got all of these different pieces in here. So you can actually generate an E-core or an EMF model based on a schema. So that is what I'm going to do here. I'm going to right click on the model, do new, and then other. And this time I'm actually going to create a new EMF generator model. And you hit next. I'm going to give it a file name of exif.genmodel and hit next. You'll see it gives you a lot of selections here that you want to use. In a minute we're going to create another one off of the E-core model that we just created. This one we're going to create it from an XML schema. I'm going to browse my workspace because that's where I have it, and then go find the schema, and I'm going to hit OK, and then next, and it shows me the package that it's going to create. You can actually type in different names here for the file name, and then I'm going to finish and let it get off to the races. You'll see it created EXIF gen model. It also created exif.ecore. So looking at the gen model, which is what this file is, you can look and see all the different types it created. I mean, like flash type has several modes. I mean, it's just got a lot of data in here. When you load things from a schema, the thing that you want to look for is something called a document root. That is typically what they use to be the main things in the document. So this shows some feature maps, but the main piece that you got is this EXIF metadata type. So that's what we're going to use on our photo, is an EXIF metadata type. Of course it's metadata, it's EMF. That's what EMF loves. So in order to get that in here, here's another gotcha, is that you can right click here in an empty spot on your editor and do load resource. And then I want to browse my workspace, and I'm going to go find the eCore file that contains the EXIF data and hit OK. What that does is now the types that are in this eCore are available for me to use on my photo. So now I can add a new e-reference. I'm going to call it EXIF, and its type is going to be EXIF metadata type. So So I've got that, and this one I'm going to mark containment to be true because it doesn't really make sense to have multiple photos point to the same metadata or things like that, because it should be contained within. So now I'm going to save this, and so the next thing is to create a gen model for the photo toolkit eCore. So I'm going to right click on it and do new, other, and then go find my EMF generator model. And since I'd already selected the photo toolkit eCore, it knows that that's what I want to pick. So it goes ahead and does photo toolkit.gen model. If you went the other way without selecting it, you would have to go select the eCore and then pick the eCore file and then give it the name and all of that kind of stuff. So we do next, eCore model. Yep, that's correct. I just have to click load. I think I did that. So next. So the other thing you can do, I could have this one generator model generate for both of these packages. I don't want to do that though, so I'm going to hit add and go find my other gen model. I'm going to hit OK. And so what this says is I can say select the EXIF model. So now any of the EXIF code, it will be generated from this EXIF model, and then this package, Photo Toolkit, will be generated by this model. So I'm going to finish that out. So now I have two of these. I have the EXIF gen model, and I have the Photo Toolkit model. The first thing we're going to do is just go ahead and generate some, well actually I'll go ahead and show you a couple of things in here before we get that far. So there are a lot of properties that a gen model can have, which you can get to if you select the top level and you look at your properties. You'll see a lot of stuff in here. The main ones that we're going to use, actually I don't think we're going to change anything tonight, but this is the type of thing that you can get to. And then if you actually select the package, you have even more things that you can go and modify. So what we're going to do is right click, and then we're going to do generate all, which should generate code, and it will create some other projects in our package explorer here. And this one actually takes a little longer because there is a lot of classes that are involved. You'll see it created an edit package, an editor package, and then a package for tests, which are basically empty shell tests that you can go fill in later if you want. So next we're going to generate the toolkit, or the photo toolkit projects, which are the same projects. It just generates more code. So now if I go look in here, I have a source directory that now has the photo toolkit, and it also has other types of things like this for the EXIF. But actually I don't want my toolkit to be named just photo toolkit package. I actually would like it to be com.eclipse hsveclipse.phototoolkit. So to do that, I'm going to go back into my gen model. Let's see if I can remember this off the top of my head. I believe I go to this guy, and then let's see, namespace prefix, there we go. So I guess I have to go back to the actual model in here and modify this guy. So let's just change this to com hsv eclipse. I'm not sure that's correct, but we'll see what happens. If I go over here, whoops, first I need to save this. Now I go over here, it gives me that. So let's try to generate this again and see what happens. I'm just going to regenerate the model code to see if it gives us a different... So that had no effect. Ah, that's what I'm looking for, base package. Alright, so base package is going to be com.json HSV Eclipse. I remember now. So we're going to go back and change this back to what we had it. And save. And then go over here and yes, save. You can go check and make sure that what we had actually stayed. Nope, it did not. So base package. com.hsv Eclipse. Now save it again. Now I'm going to generate the model code. And you'll see that it popped it into Huntsville, we'll call them Huntsville Eclipse Photo Toolkit. So I'm going to remove these two, or these three, from here. Actually, I'm going to remove all three of these projects. We're just going to do the whole thing again for that. That's the fun thing about, especially when we get everything into our GitHub, you really don't have to worry about killing everything because you can always go back. We remove those two. I'm going to do a little cleanup here because it when it exports these packages, it goes into the runtime tab and actually adds these in. So clean that up. So the next thing I want to do is on this guy generate all again. And then after that's finished, we'll generate the toolkit model. And then we will actually run this thing and see what happens. So there are a lot of little properties here and there that you can get into that at some point I'm sure we'll cover some of them. If not, there is an EMF book that is I think it's called Eclipse Modeling Framework. That I'm not sure what version there is now. We'll put a link to it on the presentation when we get it online. It's basically the end-all be-all book of Eclipse Modeling Framework that you would really want to read into if you get deep into this. So next is to go to our photo toolkit and generate all. So the next thing we are going to do is I'm going to close out some stuff just because it annoys me when I have so many editors open. So I'm going to open this plugin.xml file, and on the overview tab you'll see a lot of stuff, but then up here you'll see a little button that looks like a play button. So we're going to go ahead and launch this and see what happens. So down here it shows me it's launching. So what it's doing now is taking the plugins that are in my workspace and launching them along with all of the plugins that are currently installed in my Eclipse Luna installation that I'm actually running. So, which could be quite a lot. Usually when we get into more of an actual product, we will create a target platform which includes all of the plugins that we want to include with our product and just launch with those. So here's some stuff I had done last time we were doing this. So I'll start this from scratch to cover anything. Some of the documentation you find online actually, there's one part that I found that some of them miss. So if you're, let's say you've generated all your code and you have a model and you're trying to create a new instance of your model, the thing you have to do first is to create a project, which we're just going to do an empty project, and call it stuff, because you have to have some place to put the resource. And then you can do a file new, go to other, and so what I'm looking for, there's an EXIF model. I'm not sure what the expressions model was. I bet we've got something wrong. But anyway, here's, we'll go ahead and work with the EXIF data that we had pulled. I'm going to call it temp tags, and we'll just see what happens. So this guy, So it'll create a new item. Right now it created a document root with the metadata type. So then if I go down into properties, I can right click on this, new child, and I want to create a new, let's say an IFD type. And then in here, you see how many different kinds of things that you can create. So I'm going to go with metering mode type. I'm going to set this guy, it's enumeration. So I'm going to go with what most people use, which is not spot meter. I don't really see that. So I'll go with average, I guess. So you can just start adding all kinds of things into here. So you could create a TIFF type, and then under here you've got all of these different types of things. So maybe an orientation. So top left, we might want it. Let's go with bottom left, or left bottom, I guess. So you can see how that kind of works. If you want to right click this thing and say open with text editor, you can actually see what the resource itself as it's saved to file looks like. But for now I'm going to close this down and go see if I can find out what happened to my project. I remember that I had generated this code once in the wrong package and then generated again. And having messed up stuff in Eclipse for years, I've got a clue that possibly my plugin XML does not, for extensions, I may have the package at the wrong place. So each eCore model also has a generated package, and there's a registry that is involved in the back end that says, okay, there's an EXIF package, and here's the class name for the main package. So I know here, well, there's a class name for the main package. I want to actually make sure this class exists, so I can click on class and it'll take me there. So that looks like it's gone okay. Extension parser. So this one would be called Photo Toolkit, and this one would end in EXIF. So that's quite interesting. I wonder what the actual things would be called. All right, so you need to see how much code gets generated. Let me look in this plugin and see what it has. So the plugin extensions here are item provider adapter factories, and these are going to be correct because I actually removed the entire thing and regen them from scratch. So something has to be wrong in here. So these are exported correctly. Dependencies look right. Overview looks correct. Build properties. Okay. So next thing I'm going to check is my run configurations. When you run an application from the play button on that page, it creates this run configuration for you. You can see that it's running this product. Right now I'm using Java 1.8. Plugins are showing all plugins, so that's basically everything in the world. So let's give it a shot again and see if maybe I missed something. If not, I might have to come. I'm not sure how to patch a webcast, but we might have to cover that when we get together again. So if I right click here and go to New, Other, I should see it under here, but I'm just not sure what an expressions model or a security model are. I guess we could hit next and find out. But yeah, it's definitely not what I'm looking for. So New, Other. Another Other. examples, it's not going to be under examples anywhere. Alright, so the only other thing I know to do is try to find out where the where this photo toolkit thing might come into play. And since I know that the file extension is photo toolkit, what I'm going to do is hit Control H, which brings up the big search box. You can search for all kinds of stuff, but I'm going to look for photo toolkit, which is going to show me all of my Java code, but I'm looking at everything else too. So I'm going to hit search and see what it shows me. So yeah, that's a lot of stuff. So plugin class is that. What I'm looking for is something more along the lines of a some kind of a what's it called? A wizard, something like that. Class photo toolkit editor. Editor model, create a new one. Well, that looks like a wizard. Let's see. Let me open up the plugin for the editor. So if I go to extensions, new wizards. So that's interesting. I see the new wizard for the EXIF model. I don't see the new wizard for the photo toolkit, even though I see this piece right here. So I'm not sure I know enough off the top of my head to be able to generate one of these by itself. I'm going to go back to the model and see what happens if I regenerate the editor code again. Which that's the wrong one. So the editor, and I got nothing new. Alright, so I'm going to do what I've already done once and go delete these, select delete everything to delete them from my workspace, and then I'm going to generate all for the photo toolkit and then go check this again. Of course everything is red because, well, red meaning has errors because we have not regenerated the other pieces for the EXIF stuff. So extensions, now I have a new wizard for a photo toolkit. Isn't that interesting? So now I'm going to open up the other model, the other gen model for EXIF, and do generate all, which will do, basically this is what we've done twice already. I apologize for making you sit here and watch this go preparing all of these new files. But this is what we get into sometimes with Eclipse. Things work over and over and over again, and then you find that one place where you forgot to do something, or this one part that doesn't seem to work like the rest. Which that's one of the things I just seem to have found. So I've got two editors here, but I still only have one wizard. What I'm wondering is if the first gen model actually creates the wizard and the second one doesn't, and it's order dependent, which I'm not sure why that would matter. But in any case, let's go to run Eclipse application again, and we will see what pops up. Which the funny part is that this is almost exactly what happened live in the in our meeting the other day. Tried something and it didn't work the first time. So I'm going to right click on stuff, go to new and other. So now I see photo toolkit model. So I'm going to hit next. I'm going to go create a photo. Next, I'm going to go to here. I'm going to create a new photo. And so I have a new photo, and you see ID, name, tags, URI. So photo, I'm going to call this, I don't know if you were out a couple of weeks ago. Actually, I think it was earlier this week, actually, for Supermoon. That's what I'm going to call it. The URI for me is going to be home, J. Langley, photos, supermoon.jpg. Tags, I'm going to select this guy and go put, let's see, lunar. Why not? Night. Let's try that. I'm just making stuff up here. For the ID, since we're doing all this by hand, yeah, I'm going to put a 1. It is a string, but you can still put 1. So we're going to go with that. The next thing we're going to do is create a new, let's go create a gallery real quick. And I'm going to call this gallery. We're going to get a gallery. And so in here, we're going to call this, let's see, I'm going to call it my gallery. And then description, first gallery for photo toolkit. For photos, if you see, I don't actually have any available. But if you remember the trick that we used before, I can right click, load resource, browse workspace, and then I'm going to go find my actual photo toolkit. I'm going to add that guy. And so now, when I get into here for photos, it will show me my photo that I can add. So I'm going to do that. So I have one photo, URL, I'm going to leave blank. I'm going to save this. So if you go and you look at the gallery, let's see, let's open this guy with a text editor. I want to show you something. Well, that's pretty boring. But anyway, you see the gallery, you see the, that's actually the namespace URI that we'd put in earlier. The name of the gallery, URL is empty, description, and then photos has this photo, the photo toolkit. If this were a containment reference to photo, it would actually have the photo embedded in this resource. One of the other gotchas is for non-containment references. In order, when you're saving the gallery, it grabs the URL or the URI of the photo. If we're doing this on the fly and you have code that creates all of this stuff, if the photo was created but not saved to a file yet or to a resource, it will not have a URI, and you will hit way under the covers, it'll be a null pointer exception. So that's one of the other gotchas. But let's go back to the photo toolkit. As you notice, there's a we got the photo here. So this is the properties view that is automatically generated. So we just generated the code. We'll go back and look at that real quick. So back here. So we just generated a ton of source code for all of these things, along with the editor code that basically gives you providers and things like that for all the different types. We also generated the Eclipse plugin editor code with creation wizards, things like that, icons that came with it. If you change these icons out to other images that you want to use, they'll show up just like that in your application. So that's one of the things that that's really nice to get out of the box. Oops, wrong one. Let me go find the other one. So one of the other things I want to look at is an outline screen, which shows up over here. This is also generated, so I can see things in my gallery and whatnot. So some of the other items I haven't found very useful, but I'm sure somebody will find some use for these. But anyway, that is the basic piece that we were going to talk about for how to create an EMF model, generate code from the EMF model, and then run it. We talked about several of the different items that you can do, like the resource, the reference, the attribute, things like that. And so the next time, the next installment of Eclipse by Example will be on how to use some of the RCP, or Rich Client Platform, which is a windowing toolkit piece that Eclipse uses, and probably some of Window Builder. We'll see what Kyle has in store. But anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in, and I will see you next time.